Welcome. This is MoneyHeart. I'm Biadasz, and we are exploring the emotional side of money. Today, we're discussing making the best out of the worst. My guest is Biadasz. He's a graduate of Florida State University. His passion for and expertise in the area of networking has benefited many for nearly 2 decades and led to his first 2 books. Peter has also been known to liven up his speaking engagements by utilizing his professional trumpet talent. Peter is the author of 17 books and counting, and the president of Total Publishing and Media. Peter, welcome to MoneyHeart. So glad to have you.
Well, thank you for having me, Camille. Looking forward to talking with you.
Absolutely, yeah. So when we first started chatting about this topic a few weeks ago, you told me that you used to work as a bank auditor and you would audit their disaster recovery plans. I've never come across anybody that did that before. So what was involved and what'd you do?
Well, it's a very interesting job because disaster recovery was just one part of the operational financial audits that we did. But the bottom line is when you have a bank, this particular bank is a multi-billion-dollar bank, people are relying on the bank to take care of their money and their loans and all kinds of finances. So if something happens, whether it be like a pandemic like we're in right now, or if there's a flood, bad storms, all kinds of things can happen. Fire, the company has to be able to operate as if nothing had happened. Many times, bad things will happen to a company. The customers will never know about it. That means they had some good planning ahead of time, a good disaster recovery plan. So our job in looking at the disaster recovery plans was to try to go and look at every single possible thing that can happen to a company, and actually take it down to not just the company, but then you have a division, you have a department, you have a unit, you have the employees. So it's a very complex, the larger the company, the more complex the situation, especially if there's multiple buildings involved. This company probably had, between operations and all the branches, maybe 30, 40, 50 buildings. So we had to come up with a plan to make sure that no matter what happened anywhere, the customers would not be affected. Because for a company, if the customers are affected, the company gets affected in the long term, usually financially. So we're just making sure that things are staying financially healthy for the customers, and making sure things keep on going like they're supposed to be.
Right. So basically disaster happens and by the next morning, everything's back to running just the way it always does. Nobody even knows about it.
Not even the next morning. A good example is like this Zoom call right now.
Yeah.
If something happened on the internet somewhere along the way, we don't want to wait till the next morning to continue this call. We want to get right back to it right away. In fact, there may be a router situation that reroutes stuff, so there may be something wrong with the system, but we never know that because their disaster recovery implementation is so thorough that us on this call don't know about it. So it's not a matter of waiting till the next day. It's having it fixed right then and there.
Yeah, that's really cool concept. So kind of a redundancy, and what else goes into it? So
it's not just redundancy, it's redundancy of redundancies. Like let's say the power goes out. What's your power backup?
I have a little thing under my desk.
Yeah, well, what if the power company went out?
Then I have a problem in a couple hours. Exactly.
Whereas at the office, we've got this natural gas generator that automatically kicks on. And so you may see a flicker, but it does not affect the computer systems, doesn't affect the electrical flow of anything right away. Same things, let's say the building burns down. Okay, so where's your plan B location? If you're working with maybe a larger company or a company with several different areas of operation, let's say this city, total disaster, but things are okay 100 miles away. What will it take to set up shop 100 miles away? We have everything in place to do that. And it's not just having this, the chairs and the phones and this, that, and the other set up. It's maybe knowing what vendors to call on to do things. You don't have to have everything yourself, but if you have your list of vendors, so like for what we do as a publishing company, I mean, we have graphic designers, we have editors, we have illustrators, we have typesetters, we have cover designers, we have distributors. That if anything in that supply chain, so to speak, or that production chain falters in some way, shape, or form, there's a plan B and a plan C. So it's just kind of like if you own a company and the owner drops dead, what's going to happen to the company?
Right.
You know, which is a kind of extreme thing, but you have to
But
be
it
ready.
happens.
It happens, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And you see companies, especially family-owned companies, when the company goes from owner to the children, the success rate normally is only 13%. If you have going to the third generation, it's like maybe 1%.
Wow.
But if that happens because of a disaster, that 13% goes down drastically unless the owner had followed Stephen Covey's first rule of the 7 laws of success that he has, or 7 rules of highly effective people.
Right.
Begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. So by auditing disaster recovery plans, when I started working for other companies, I'd go in as an employee or a manager and go, hey, what's your disaster recovery plan? And I'd had some companies go, hey, here's our plan. What do you think of it? You've audited them. Tell us what it's like. And I've had some other owners go, disaster recovery plan? What's that? Oh, we probably need one of those.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think I want to get one of those.
Exactly. So any companies I've owned, again, you begin with the end in mind. You formulate how to open the company, how to acquire customers, how to get things rolling, but at the same time, how to close the company voluntarily or involuntarily. That way, if something happens along the way, you're already set, rather than being 3 or 4 steps behind. Good example for here was a few years ago, we had this big old ice storm that shut down power and roads and everything for up to 5 weeks in some areas.
Yes.
We never missed a beat. Never missed a beat. This situation we're going through with coronavirus right now, because we have authors all over the place, we were already set up to do things by email, by Zoom, by phone. And yes, we missed some of the face-to-face, but so many of our authors are out of town that my face-to-face was more networking or dealing with a local author, which we're now doing through Zoom. So the company was actually set up with the end in mind just in case something happened. And because I do enough traveling with author development, teaching, and things like that, we've learned how to run the company on the road. And so a lot of times our customers don't know where and what we are, which is fine because for security reasons, we like it that way too. But also it's seamless. And if people don't feel like things are slowing down or they're seeing hiccups or this, that, and the other, and it's like, okay, the disaster recovery plan is working.
Yeah.
Now, putting the plan together is I won't say it's a pain, but it's a pain because you're doing something that you hope that you'll never, ever need. Right. And you get down to the ridiculous of if the manager of such and such department is out sick and their backup is out sick and their back out is up sick, what do you do?
Right.
Because most people will think, well, hey, my manager's out. I got the second in charge. Well, what if they're both out? What if the third's out? My business manager for years, I got her when my second book was coming out before I got Total Publishing. And her big thing was, what happens if you walk outside the door and get hit by a bus? The first year that she was around me, she probably said that once or twice a week. And I'm like, I'm not going to get hit by a bus. She goes, well, what if? And the plan was in place, but it helped tighten everything up. So that if I did go outside and get hit by a bus, no big deal. Feel bad for the bus.
Yes. So kind of talk about a little more on that process of putting together the plan, because you touched on thinking of what's going to happen in the future, but for some of us, that's a little difficult. You're all excited about starting your new business. You're not thinking about what happens when the building burns down or you get hit by a bus. It's kind of counter to what we're usually thinking about.
Exactly. And for me, the coming up with the plan starts with, even before you start coming up with a plan, attitude. One of my big speeches I've done a gazillion times is maintaining a positive attitude and learning that failure is not failure. It's just a different way of getting through life. Failure is not failure as long as you learn something. Sometimes it's a chance to develop your sense of humor. Tom Hopkins has some great teaching on this. But first, you have to make that decision to have a good attitude regardless of what happens. Because part of recovery from a disaster, a lot of that is attitude. They always say, when the chips are down, that's when you find out who you really are. When the place is burnt down and everything's gone, and then you learn out who you really are. Knowing that you are prepared emotionally and spiritually and physically for the plan to happen is really most of the plan. Just because you have a binder that says, here's my disaster recovery plan, doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen. It's like if you're in sports, if you're a coach of a team and you're going to play this other team, you have your plays and everything else. But next thing you know, you're down a gazillion to nothing at halftime. You're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But if you prepared for adversity ahead of time up here and in here, then you go into the attitude, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So one thing I do every morning, and this is actually going to be in my next book that I'm working on right now, I have this priority checklist. I actually have mine here, and this will be in the book. But every morning I go through my priorities, because I know if my priorities are set, then I can work the plan, positive and negative. Okay, just a brief overview. First, I look at my relationship with God. Some people believe in God, some people don't. For me, God is a lot of things, but the biggest thing is something bigger than myself. You always need to believe in something bigger than yourself. Okay, so that's where it starts. So we're not going to get into theology. But I look at myself spiritually, spirit, mind, and body, making sure that in those three areas, I'm in good shape, because I know if my spirit, mind, and body are in good places, then emotionally I'm going to be in a good place. Usually if I'm in a bad place emotionally, it's one of those three is kind of out of kilter. And sometimes it just comes down to sleep.
So
Very
much. Oh man. Yeah.
Important too. Okay, next thing is family. I go through my entire family list here, immediate family and extended family, because again, priorities, the God, self, and family, and then friends. So people don't think about their friends. There's 4 levels of friendship. Could do a whole seminar on that. And then we get down to work. Okay, most people think of the disaster recovery plan as work, work, work. No, if you don't go into that work thing with the right mindset, you're not going to be as effective as an employee or as an owner or manager or whatever you're doing. Okay, and then with work, I list all the different areas that I have income from. Okay, a lot of people have multiple sources of income, or if you have a company, you have multiple sources of where money comes from. Know where all the money comes from is very, very important, because a part of disaster recovery is protecting where all the money comes from. If you just leave off one income stream, you might be amazed what happens to your company during a disaster. And that's not a happy thing. Okay, the next thing is hobbies. We all have hobbies. Those are things we do. Money does not come in. If people say, hey, I like to do this and it's part of my job, well, is it really a part of your job? If it's not making money, it's probably just a hobby. And understand the difference between work stuff and hobbies is real important too. And then that's kind of the end of the list. So if you have all that set in order and the priorities are right, when you get to the point, then you're ready to make your disaster recovery plan. And the first thing is, if you already have all your income streams, excuse me, if you know where the money's coming from, then it's a matter of flow charting. In accounting, you can actually flow chart, make pictures of how the money comes in. In the bank, it was, okay, you walk into the bank, you give the teller a deposit slip and a check, okay? What happens is that deposit slip and that check from the teller to operations to where the check gets to the other bank, and the other bank gives the money back to that bank, okay? But for what we do, it's a matter of, okay, the author gives us a manuscript. What happens every step of the way through the editing, copying, typesetting, marketing, distributing, every single process along the way, what are all the variables and scenarios? Who's doing them? Who's their backup? Who's the backup to that backup? Okay. On the marketing side, there's a whole other platform there too. So it's a matter of thinking about every single thing that's going on within the company, listing them out. And these are long lists. This is not an easy process. It's arduous and time consuming. Like I said, you probably end up with a binder at the end, and you have to review things at least annually, because things will change, and things change subtly. So you may not think things have changed during the last year, but as soon as you start doing your disaster recovery plan from last year, and you realize, okay, that works, we got better at that, that doesn't exist anymore. Oh my God, what happened? That, all kinds of stuff happens. Right. Someone has good ideas and bad ideas along the way. And the disaster recovery plan, you want it in several places. Sitting on your desk. If the building burns down and your desk is gone, doesn't work really good. It's like computer backup. It's got to be in like 3 or 4 different places. Sure. On-site, off-site. Yeah. So very, very important. So does that kind of help answer your question?
Absolutely. Yes, it does. Yes. And we got into how to make the plan. I guess the next thing to talk about would be talk about the team that you need to have in place, because it seems like if I were just to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to make a disaster recovery plan for my business, I'd probably miss something.
Well, and that comes down to making sure everyone that you value within the company get some input to the plan, because they are doing things that you do not know that they do. It's impossible for one person to know everything that everybody does. Like, I can walk up to an editor, and actually graphics is a good situation, because graphics will send me book covers, and you can see book covers behind me. I'm not a designer. That's why they do their thing. I do not know the processes of what they need as backup. If their department just burned to the ground or got flooded, let's say, or power something went out, I would need to find out from them, okay, tell me your process in which you would need to duplicate or replicate or replace those processes. So you need to get input from everybody, but also you're getting buy-in from everybody, because if you have to use the plan, they're the ones implementing the plan. And if they go, oh my God, I've never seen this before, what's this? Versus, okay, I was a part of this, I totally agree, that was my idea, and yeah, we're on this. Two different worlds there, two different worlds. So you want to get as much input from people as you can. Plus, it's also a good time to do an operational audit too, because you'll learn things going on in the company, some good, some bad, some that can be refined better. Some people may have some ideas that are better than yours. That's the thing too. You always want to hire people better than you or smarter than you. You know, we're the captains, so to speak, but everybody else is doing their good things there, and they're experts at what they do. You know, I always joke that, I may have written, 17 books, but really I'm an author. There's a difference between being an author and being a writer. Authors are idea people. I have editors that make me look a good writer. Okay, I don't pretend to be a good writer. I thank God for the editors. They're the ones that have the degrees in grammar and rhetoric and all the stuff that put me asleep in high school. So and that's why disaster recovery is really, really good. We had a situation come up yesterday with the social media department, and was talking with someone who came up with an amazing idea. And I was like, that is so good. I think we need to document this as far as company policy goes. Let me send you an email and give you 2 cents worth, because there was a verbal conversation. So I sent her a write-up for her to go through and do what she wants to do with it. And she'll send it back to me, and now she has some buy-in on all that situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I guess we should briefly mention your books and things like that, and tell people that also you're my publisher as well.
That's right.
Yeah, I see my book is behind you on the shelf.
There we go.
Right there, yes, The Shake Up, Misfit to Best Fit in 30 Days. And then, of course, I have a copy of one of your books, which is Write Your First Book. Yeah.
Cover back here too. There we go. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. You get the big poster going back there in the back. So yeah, this is awesome. Thank you. I feel like now I need a disaster recovery plan for my business, and I also sort of feel like I need one for my family. Like, what are we going to do if somebody gets sick or hurt or whatever? On
the family thing, one thing my parents always did was when we got a new house, fire escape routes.
Yeah.
If you don't have your family, the fire escape routes, the time to not do that is when there's a fire.
Don't figure that out while the house is on fire.
That's correct. That's correct. So, but yeah, so I guess I know in that way I was raised with disaster recovery plans. I just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
But same thing if you're in a car, knowing, if you get in an accident, what are your escape routes? When we get on an airplane, that's one of the things we do is, if something happens on the plane, how do we get out of this thing?
They do. Yeah. Every single time, even if you don't want to hear it.
That's right. That's right. There's some airlines that will make a comedy presentation out of that, but it is serious.
Yes.
So,
and it's almost to the point where I've flown enough times that I could get up there. I feel like I could get up there and do at least half the presentation.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's interesting when they point out the doors, and you always hear one passenger goes, "Oh, I didn't know there was a door over there." It's like, oh, okay, this could be interesting.
It's their first day.
Unfortunately, that's not true, but that's okay.
I'm just, benefit of the doubt right there.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for letting me share this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. If you would like to get some more information on Peter or his company, you can do so at totalpublishingandmedia.com. Peter's company, Total Publishing and Media, offers a full range of publishing and marketing services to move your concept to a published selling book. So, yep, I can testify he does make that happen. And it's a really great process too. I actually really enjoyed working with him on my book, and yes, amen for editors.
Yes.
Wonderful people. If you want to contact Peter, you can do so by emailing Peter at totalpublishingandmedia.com. Thank you as well to all of our listeners and viewers. I'm your host, Camille Diaz. This show is sponsored by Serenity Financial, a Five Rings financial agency specializing in financial education, living benefits, and guaranteed lifetime income. Today's money mantra is, I am the author of my own money story.
Excellent.